where the canal comes into the diversion tunnel. Now we're looking south. It's crossing here, South Street.
We begin with extreme heat baking communities across the country. Almost 90 million Americans are experiencing temperatures above 90 degrees today.
An extreme set of cascading climate events is leading to a higher mortality rate of Chinook salmon along the Sacramento River.
With wildfires burning across California, the death toll is now rising.
State water officials say they will only get 5% of requested water supply to the State Water Project, which provides water for 27 million people who rely on reservoirs.
California's drought has gone from bad to catastrophic. And from farms to family homes, almost everyone is experiencing the impacts.
For the first time in more than 100 years, customers of the Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District are without water.
I can't believe they shut down that canal. There's no way people are going to be able to survive that.
They estimated the impact was $1.4 billion to the economy.
This is the largest environmental impact of any discretionary decision in the state of California.
There was no willingness to fight. There was no fight at all.
Was this neglect? Was this mismanagement? Was this corruption?
I don't think they really realized the ramifications of what this was going to do.
This area was a nice green paradise oasis that is now dried up.
Hold on to your hat. It's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a wild ride.
So I had a local source reach out to me, and she'd recently moved to a new piece of land that's within the ACID region. She basically explained that for many months, she and her family had been without water. They were so low on water that they were showering at the YMCA and that they were taking their clothes to the laundromat to wash them, that they were spending $1,200 a month just to basically run their dishwasher, flush their toilet, and have drinking water. This was stunning information to me. Listening to her, I remember where I was sitting when she told me this story, and I thought, how is this possible that 20 minutes from me, there's essentially a humanitarian crisis going on where people do not have domestic water? Very small scale. Nobody's heard about it, even in our community. And that's when we first started investigating.
Hey guys, I'm going to show you a little bit of my farm here and how dead it is. This is usually lush and green as can be. And as you can see, there is nothing lush and green. It's just barren.
This is the irrigation ditch that should be full of water. Every bit of it. This should all be green.
Yeah, I have to say this really makes me sick. Over 100 years these trees have been watered.
Thank you, Border Reclamation. All these pollywogs out here, millions.
Hey guys, you're hungry, huh? Starting to look like a barren desert out here.
This is literally my worst nightmare. This was so beautiful last year when we moved in. If this had been irrigated, this wouldn't be happening to us. This isn't right. Oh, sweet Jesus, please help us. Help all of us, please.
I'm Annalise Pierce, and I'm the editor and a community reporter for Shasta Scout, which is an online news service for Shasta County. At the time, I had heard of ACID, but I really wasn't familiar with what it is. Here in Shasta County, you know, it's small enough water district that if you're not within that region, you've heard of it, but you might not know what it means.
The Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District, also known as ACID, is one of the most senior water right holders here in Shasta County. So they've got a very old water right out of the Sacramento River, and historically it irrigated areas all throughout Anderson and Cottonwood and areas of South Redding.
Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District has approximately 700 different water users. Primarily, it's smaller single-family homes. It delivers water to small pastures and irrigated fields, about 7,000 acres of pasture land.
We're a community that's driven by a good family experience. Population's right about 11,000. It has everything I like, which is country living, I want to be near water. I want to be near the mountains. I love to hunt, fish, and be in the outdoors.
One thing that's really interesting about the ACID irrigation system is that all of it is flood irrigation. So we flood irrigate our pastures, but a lot of that water goes down and feeds the aquifer. And not only are we creating high quality green pastures for cattle, we're also recharging the aquifer at the same time and storing water for our community to use. Our family, we raised a handful of cows annually. We'd finish a few and we'd harvest them, and I had friends that would buy from me every year. It was great. I knew that I supported a few families raising really high quality grass-fed beef. My name is James Rickert. I grew up in a ranching family. I'm actually a 5th generation rancher here in Shasta County. My great-grandfather used to ranch in the Balls Ferry area of ACID. So he was irrigating there in the late 30s, 40s. I had the opportunity of living in his old ranch house and running that ranch. My 2 oldest kids got to, be there when they were really, really small. We found a nice little place here, Churn Creek Bottom. It's got great water rights and great soil and a good little spot to raise a family. This morning, my daughter went out and fed the horses. Didn't need to ask her to. She knows exactly what she needs to do. My son goes out and does the chicken chores. He knows exactly what he needs to do. All this is done before school. And I think those are really good lessons that we can teach our children. I think it's really valuable. It was passed on to me, and I want to pass that on to the next generation. And hopefully my kids can keep it going as well. I never realized how much I loved agriculture until I moved away from the family farm and went to college. And then I realized quickly that I want to spend my life in ag. Now I'm a certified general real estate appraiser, and my focus is agriculture. So I will go out to a farm, a ranch, and I'll write a big report and tell people how much it's worth. There's a couple reasons why I bought this property, but primarily it was the water. The ACID has senior water rights, and just the way the state has gone, I really felt that I needed to have good, reliable water rights if I was going to have a successful business here. We have a lot of people in these smaller rural areas that have wells. Their water's coming from ACID. So what happens when you shut the water off? You're seeing all these people, and myself included, I live in ACID and I've got a well. People's wells are going dry. It was really devastating when we lost our water this year. I had to sell cows that were named. I had some of the cow, one cow in particular, she was 8 years old, and I've had her since she was, I was there when she was born. I had her out at the Bella Vista Ranch at my great-grandpa's and brought her with me, basically, and had another bottle calf that I fed religiously every day. Her name was Gloria, had Gloria forever, and she was probably 7, I think, when I had to sell her. And so these become just, parts of your family, and it's tough having to sell them.
Haynes says the board had 3 options after getting their water allocation. They could have done nothing, they could have run the water through the canal, even though it wouldn't get past Reading city limits, or they could sell the water. The board decided to sell the water to neighboring cities and districts for around $7 million, leaving customers frustrated.
This was my first time going into those water district meetings. They're very small worlds usually, very few attendees, really dull, boring. The kinds of things really only investigative journalists go to. But I do remember the first ACID meeting I went to was anything but dull and boring. It was a packed out room overflowing into the hallways in multiple directions. And I arrived probably 5 minutes after the meeting started and could barely squeeze inside, and just immediately started filming the number of people in the room standing against all the walls.
Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. I call this meeting to order at the Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District for July 14th, 2022. All of our board members are here. We have Tiger Michael on my left, Audie Butcher, Ray Alionte, and Rick Williams. And my name is Brenda Lee.
What we did see was a public that didn't feel well represented, that didn't really feel like they were having opportunities to engage with the board in a meaningful way.
We are limiting it to 2 minutes each. The board and staff will not be responding.
The board meetings didn't create a forum for us to come together.
So this board, they were limiting how long you could talk. They were being very dismissive of people. So it felt almost like two groups, like these competing groups.
I had 3 items, so I get 2 minutes each on my 2 minutes total.
Yeah, you got plenty of time.
Okay.
You could speak your piece, but then when the buzzer went off, you had to go sit down.
We have an agenda, and by the Brown Act, we are required to follow our agenda.
What we saw happening with public transparency in the Brown Act when it came to ACID was that was forming sort of a shield in an inappropriate way for the board.
You're not allowed to speak from your seat, or those unfortunately not have a seat from your feet.
When people would say, ask a question, and they would really want the officials to answer that question, the officials might say, under the Brown Act, we're not really allowed to engage with you right now.
And this is not a place for give and take and conversation back and forth as per the Brown Act.
They would hear Brown Act, Brown Act, Brown Act, and they were kind of just saying, okay, we don't know how this law works. We just would love some information, please, some information.
There's this sort of adversarial feeling in the room that, shouldn't be there when you guys are all after the same thing.
I think the public often felt jerked around by the board.
This board was set up to deliver water to the people that irrigate in the district, not outside the district.
You're telling the public that we don't care what you say.
And you're ignoring all these people. Okay, I quit work. Shut up here at 2 o'clock. You got to start getting water on our fields the agenda.
Understand, and you're out of order.
Oh, yes, I understand. You're out.
It's my
that
first
simple.
meeting here, and I can tell that you were the problem, lady.
I was just blown away at the way the board treated the public in there, how the public was hurting and wanted to be heard. There was just so many things that I came home and I went, wow, what can I do?
So when we first started looking into ACID and why the water wasn't there for the residents, why did they get 0 water allocations? What we found, of course, right away was what the district was openly telling people, that they had sold off a percentage of the water because it wasn't enough to go down the canal. But why that larger amount of water, essentially 82% of the water, why was that not brought into the district? That was a different question. And what we found out was essentially that there was a voluntary agreement that was entered into between the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal agency that manages the water, and the local water districts, including ACID, through their organizing group, which is the Sacramento River Settlement Contractors.
So the Sacramento River Settlement Contractors are about 130 contractors that the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation had to settle water rights with along the Sacramento River because they predated Shasta Dam.
The Bureau of Reclamation, its primary purpose and mission is to deliver water and generate power in the western United States in an environmentally and economically reasonable manner. Our 2 projects supply water to various contractors throughout the state, which are principally public agencies and cities that have contracted with us for a water supply.
So when these big partners came to the table together, they had to meet a judge's order to ensure the protection of the environment. And in order to do that, they had to make some really difficult compromises and decisions.
If you combine the total amount of water that the Sacramento River Settlement Contractors controlled at a 75% release, which is what our contract called for, we actually could pull more water than what was behind the dam this year, right? And obviously there's a disconnect on something like that. So we compromised, we came to a negotiated solution at where we ended up at 18%.
Which is something we've never done before, hopefully never do again, but it was something we had to do in face of extraordinary conditions that we faced last year.
And so with such a low allocation to this district, the board felt that 18% wouldn't be sufficient to adequately irrigate the entire district. So they made the decision to sell the water.
Another of the interesting claims that came out was this idea that the 18% of water that was left wouldn't move down the canal and couldn't serve the environment or people. It's one of the things that we saw quite frequently as we looked into the ACID region. A lot of times statements were made that as you looked into them, Maybe they made some common sense. Maybe there were some reasons people were saying them, but there wasn't necessarily the data or evidence to back them. One of the things I found right away with ACID is that there was a real lack of documentation in a lot of different directions. Something that we always know as journalists is just because it's not in the packets given to the public or in the online, information portals doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We did document requests. We asked a lot of questions. There was still a lack of some of the documentation that we wanted to see, particularly that report related to the water moving down the canals. We didn't see any evidence beyond some sort of back of the envelope type of things that was really true.
This was a discretionary decision, by the board to not take water. That would have triggered the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. So they should have done an environmental document and documented all of the things that were going to happen. And they didn't do that. They put in something called a notice of exemption, just said we're exempt, we're going to do it.
There's so many impacts to agriculture, but once we've realized the human impacts with all the wells that have gone dry, the wildlife impacts with all the species that have suffered through this, it's terrible. What I'm seeing today is not okay. I just made the decision that I wanted to be on the board. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just stepping up and I'm jumping in.
Hi, this is Brenda. You've reached my voicemail. Please leave a message with your phone number and I'll be glad to return your call as soon as I can. Thank you.
Hey Brenda, it's James Rickert again. Hey, I just wanted to connect with you. I wanted to pass on some information. I just wanted to have you hear it from me first that I will be running for the ACID board this upcoming November. So I just wanted to talk to you about it, inform you personally. You may have heard rumors that I'm running, but I just wanted you to hear it from me directly. So you can give me a call at your convenience if you'd like. If not, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Brenda. Bye. So Brenda just sent me a text. Yes, I saw your name on county records. Sorry you think I'm not doing a good job. Man, what do I say to that? We had a text dialogue. Didn't go quite as well as I'd planned, but it was respectful, which is fine. Today's meeting is not the appropriate place to announce one's candidacy, especially if you want to work with me. That would be a public slap in my face. We have good people on this board. If you really want to help your community, you should run for school board. Thank you for your perspective. I will be as respectful as possible in this process. Then I get a message from her later saying, hey, Ray and I have an idea. Can you come meet us an hour early? I really had no idea what their idea was. Well, that was an interesting meeting.
Hello?
Hey, so just met with Ray and Brenda. Ray was like, I thought long and hard about it, I prayed on it, and I would love to offer you a position as being a consultant for the district. You're like a board member, you get to do whatever you please.
Yeah, but did they talk actual numbers with you, or are they just saying this to, block you?
That's a great question. I didn't talk numbers. I think, it's too early for...
I don't know. And it's convenient that it's right before.
I know.
Right before the deadline.
20 minutes before.
It kind of seems shady to me a little. And I feel like as soon as you filed, all of a sudden they, got it together. I don't know. You know what I mean?
When I talk...
It's like a back end trying to shut you up, to be honest.
It does a little bit. All I know is that I got a meeting in 18 minutes that I was going to announce whether I'm running or not.
James basically let me know at a certain point in time that he was hoping to announce his candidacy at a certain meeting. I was going to be at that meeting anyway. And so I reached out and had a really fascinating conversation with James and just basically started to build trust with him. Of course, I'm interested that somebody's running against Brenda Haynes, and I'm interested in how the public will perceive it.
Next is James Rickert.
I think I can talk loud enough. I've got a lot at stake here. My wife and I have a small little farm in Churn Creek Bottom that's just like everyone else's. And I've thought long and hard about it, and I really settled on running for a seat here. But I'm not 100% sold on that.
There wasn't an announcement, but there was some really interesting dynamics and body languages happening. I was filming at that time and just watching the body language between the existing board members, especially Brenda Haynes, because I knew Rickert might be running against her. And his body language as well, sort of a discomfort, a feeling that something was being held back.
I just want to do what I can to help this district, but I just want to let you guys know that behind the scenes I am fighting hard. I'm here to be your advocate, guys, whether I'm sitting behind that seat or if I'm sitting right here. But either way, I'm going to be a part of the solution however I can. So, thank you.
We have Josh Davey, who is here to help us understand what we can do with our dead pastures. He's got some insight as to what we should be looking at for this fall, how we can help with this disaster. So I'd like to turn it over to Josh Davey.
Thank you. So to cut to the chase, I guess the first thing we need to know is what's going to be alive next year. And if you have some tall fescue and you're on churn or reed flow,
My family was actually a livestock family. My parents were cattle ranchers, and then I worked at different ranches through high school and even before. Worked at dairies, did a little farming of potatoes and pasture and hay and then beef cattle. I quickly learned that the beef cattle aspect was my favorite part. Every day's a little different, and that makes it enjoyable to me. This actually is a really difficult industry. It is not a highly lucrative industry in terms of profit potential. There's a lot of years where you barely pay the bills, much less make a profit. In fact, agriculture is probably one of the lowest margin industries in the world. So people engaging in it shows that they love it. And this is what they want to do. And I can speak for myself. The enjoyment that I have is just walking out and sitting back on a four-wheeler or a horse and just looking at the cattle and enjoying the efforts that the day provided. And so most people would tell you that what they actually enjoy is working on the land and making it a little bit better every day. And most people understand that for this land to be around for the generations to come, that's how it needs to be. It needs to be improved. I'm a livestock range and pasture advisor for the University of California. I'm a split between research and extension. I think the best description of it is when you come into the shop, you don't get Josh's opinion, you get a research-based answer. And if we don't have the research, then we set up the project and do it. So we obviously try to be proactive to have the research done before somebody comes in, but usually the best ideas don't come from me, I just try them out. And then you relate that to clientele in the counties, and they're able to use it to make every day a little bit easier for them. And so that's rewarding to me. Not only gaining the knowledge, but knowing that it actually matters. When I first heard that we had a zero allocation for this year, I went into panic mode. And that was my first initial mode, is how do we figure out how to survive this and not sell every single cow that's here, because feed prices are absolutely record highs right now. So just bringing everything in and feeding them through the entire summer isn't an option. It became, how many do we have to sell to be able to make it, and how do we be able to shove them around to be able to hold on to what little bit that we have left. This place with the historic water rights had guaranteed water that I could irrigate every 2 weeks and be able to bring the cattle here in the spring and know that it would last them. There'd be enough forage for the entire season and be able to sell calves in the fall. This alone to this point has cost me over $120,000, not including the extra costs that I'll have in the future of replacing cows. So I probably only have 1 year of this in me. If the water's gone again, I probably am too.
In most other states, you have a riparian-based system, which is proximity to a water body. So if you have a body of land that touches a lake, a river, or stream, you have a right to a portion of the flow or the natural amount of water in that water body. On top of that, we also have an appropriative-based system, and that's a first come, first served approach where whoever was there first and whoever was taking that water first or appropriating it kind of has a senior right, we refer to them as. So anything that was appropriated or started kind of being worked on before 1914 is grandfathered in, and the state board does not permit those. We don't really have a ton of authority to govern them, and in most years we actually don't have the authority to curtail them. So they can keep on diverting, we can send some strongly worded letters, but that's about it. And it's only under the most significant drought conditions where we actually have to go in and curtail people. So sometimes the board will curtail people, but we've only actually done that 2 years out of the last 107.
There are contractors that we have and others who were here before our projects were here. Generally, their rights are respected and come first. The Sacramento settlement contractors, that area had a dramatic impact, which generally doesn't occur because they're a higher priority pre-existing right.
In prior years, we've had a 75% allocation for drought. And with our senior water right, that's what it calls for in the contract, is that, hey, in periods of drought, ACID and other settlement contractors, that will be dropped down to 75%. That's what happened to us in 2021 last year. And you know what? 75%, that was fine. We made that work, and that's what a drought meant for a senior water right holder.
Okay, with that, the next speaker is Bill Gregory.
What have we done to ourselves, folks? For about 25 or 30 years, I've come to a meeting and we had dialogue with the board. We got things worked out. We got it down to 3 minutes, now we got it down to 2. You don't want to hear from people, you don't want to have a dialogue with them. It's pretty obvious. This water has left us since 2000. We bought 10,000 acres. We've lost our garden. The orange tree here is pretty stressed. We're probably going to lose it. Looks like we've lost our cherry tree. And hopefully we can see a lot of dead wood in the top of the walnut tree there. We kind of hoping we get some rain and maybe save that. You know, we just don't know what's going to happen there. Both of our wells are gone. Got a driller coming in on the 29th that punches a new hole. We've lost stuff that we normally get that gets us through, you know. But it's been tough. But hey, we're survivors. You know, when you get to be our age, I guess that's what they call us.
Let me show you something. That's an all-around better bull than anyone else's at the sale. That's the kind of, and he was a twin. That's the kind of bulls that we raised.
Those are awards at the bull sale down here that we got over the years. They aren't all there. There wasn't, some are hanging in the barn down there. We done well. I was just a crazy teenager, and I used to do a lot of spinning my wheels. I grew up on a ranch with cattle, and when I was young, we were in the timber industry to some extent, along with the ranch. We decided to get married, and her dad said, not until she finishes high school. So she finished high school in May. I sent her a bus ticket, and we met in Reno on May the 8th of 1954, and got married, and here it is 68 years later.
When Bill retired and my kids were in high school, we moved down here in '74. And I used to do the irrigating because he was still working. She became the president of the Shasta County Cattlemen's Association. And
They have what they call a Walt Rodman Award, and Shasta County had never done that. And she made up her mind. She's going to do it. They told her, you'll never make it. Guess what? She knocked it off 2 years in a row. You know, I'm proud of what she done with these things. But I'll tell you, all in all, we've been blessed. I think, you know, there have been some ups and downs, but we'll get it worked out, you know.
Well, the thing is, I love going to the events that are connected with raising and selling beef because I like cows. I think it's really something. And he happened decided to sell them because I turned 80-some years old and I thought it was real chintzy, but I'm glad we did now. We wouldn't have any water and I'd be worried to death about them.
We done it right, accidentally, I think. Well, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for her, this place wouldn't be what it is, I guarantee you, you know. It just, it took a lot of working together and believe me, there's a lot of sweat and blisters on your hands.
And that's why we're taking it so hard with no water, because we worked so hard to get where we were, and someone else decides we don't need any water. Why didn't they ask us or notify us ahead of time? Why do they have to be so sneaky about when they're giving away water?
I don't think they really realized the ramifications of what this was going to do. How important is $10 million in the bank with no water in the ditch? Good morning. We've got an 80-foot well. It went dry, well, started pumping muddy water and then went dry along about the last of July. We're going to get a new well here at the end of the month.
The drilling will be between 10 and 15,000. And the pump, depending on how elaborate you get, whether you go a constant pressure or a solar pump, you could be anywhere from 6,000 to 12,000. You know, I know that's a big range, but it just depends on how elaborate you go with your pump system. But there isn't a lot of drilling machines in this area right now, and it's unfortunate because we are in a drought, and most of the drillers are booking out for a year.
Don't worry, we'll fish you out if we need to.
Go back. So what is
These pipes are the air.
Yeah, those are.
Oh, okay.
These are the air that blows the screens. The Fish and Game said, fish are going down your canal. Got to stop that. John Kite with me, boy, he said, well, hey, we've been irrigating here out of this thing for 75 years. If you want fish screens in there, put them in. Fish and Game came and put the fish screens in, maintained them, took them out every year, put them back in. Worked fine. But they come along with a big grant of money and rebuilt that whole thing up there, so ACID, oh, we'll take it over. So we're burdened with that now, you know.
Our contractor, ISI, said, Nadine, I'm really concerned because this is an old structure and you keep slapping $2 or $3 million onto these old structures. You get a big flood event and you're going to have $3 million going down the river. Yep. And he said, you really need to talk to ACID. And he looked over at that and said, you know, you're not keeping up. You're not keeping up with your infrastructure. Mm-hmm.
Winter run Chinook are an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act, and we have an obligation to do what we can to minimize impacts on them. They, migrate up the Sacramento River. They end up spawning in that area below the dams, so it's important that we keep enough cold water at the right time in order so that they can spawn and so that their eggs can hatch.
The only place in the world they exist is, basically from Cottonwood to Redding, except for the ones that run to the ocean and back. And there's a lot of stressors on it. If Shasta Lake goes dry, there's not going to be enough cold water to keep those animals alive.
And one of the ironic parts of this whole scenario is that by taking the irrigation water that otherwise would have gone to the district and diverted out of the river, we've dried up some of the riparian streams and creeks that the very salmon we're seeking to protect are actually using as spawning areas. So ironically, we're managing for a species and managing against it all at one time.
So not only have you drained all of these wetlands and virtually killed all of the species up here, but you've also impacted the fish you're trying to save.
We need to consider these other factors because you just basically crushed the entire Sac Valley for the salmon species, and we didn't improve it.
That's good for me.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Now, did you see that picture over there? That was our 50th wedding anniversary picture.
Oh, wow.
We,
Your 50th? You guys look so young then.
When'd you get married? 3?
No, she was 18 and I was 20.
This, to me, is completely very applicable right now. May of 2007 was when this was submitted to the board. Here we are, 15 years later, in this scenario. This is what ACID should have been doing over these years. Inefficient system facilities result in inordinately high system losses. About 50% of water entering the system is lost to seepage, operational spills, or other losses before delivery to customers.
But what's wrong with that?
What is wrong with it is what is this year. If we had a more efficient irrigation system in some of the main stretches to get water here, we would have been able to handle 18%.
So it wasn't wasted.
It's not wasted. It's not. But you know what?
It is going into the aquifer for these wells.
That's what I was going to say. Is
I think
the water comes from precipitation, so it's coming down. There's areas where that precipitation will filter into the ground, and it slowly reaches those levels of the aquifer.
I think that when you flood irrigate your fields here, you're recharging the aquifer.
You bet.
But this is my opinion, is that you're still going to have areas of conveyance that you'll need to line to get water to areas like this. You leave some of this main canal unlined for seepage, but at least get the water here.
Are these ponds fully dry right now?
Yeah, that's what we call a domestic property, but yeah, every one of those ponds is dry.
Mouth of Cottonwood Creek Wildlife Area was originally started with this portion that we're standing on, which is what we call our mitigation area. A mitigation bank is a piece of property that if there's an entity or an organization, they have impacted a wetland or wetland acres, they can then purchase property and restore wetland acres on a different site. So they would replace those acres that were impacted. Development of this particular piece here started probably in the late 80s, early 90s. Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District was unable to make their deliveries last year. So you can see behind me, these wetlands now are dry. This is the first year that we didn't have our water allocation. Essentially, we just use the ACID water to keep these ponds flooded and manage what we can. In years like this, when the water's not available, we don't have much of a way to do that. These are going to dry up this year. Obviously, there already are. When we're dealt the cards we're dealt, we just do the best we can. There is really not a huge collaboration that goes on there between ACID and Cal Fish and Wildlife to manage this area. We are another landowner that purchases water from ACID, just much like ag producers do for grass for their cattle and things like that.
If you got 18%, which is what ACID was allocated this year, do you think you could maintain decent habitat with 18%?
We would have to cut back drastically. We would maintain a couple of these ponds probably with the water, but there's no way we could maintain the entire area.
You don't have any backup wells on this property?
Nope.
Are you guys considering drilling some now that this might be potential for more?
I, a lot of times, have a really hard time spending taxpayers' money on, spending $500,000 to go punch a well in there that could very well be in a dry hole.
Mm-hmm.
They were paid to create wetland habitat, and they're in an area with a lot of tailwater, and it was perfect. It was a win-win. You take the water out of that equation, it's a tinderbox. It's dry.
It's actually gut-wrenching. We had all these wildlife, we had the natural resource areas that acted as riparians, and now driving and seeing that all of that's gone, the cows are gone, the wildlife's gone, the trees are dead, everything's brown. The world went from a beautiful riparian area to basically dirt. It churns your stomach every time you drive to town from here.
The main part about the canal and the ACID system that helps us is the inadvertent irrigation of riparian areas to keep those green all year around. So that in itself creates what we call a natural fire barrier. Within the ACID system, there's about 3,000 acres of riparian or wildland areas that have had water for decades. With the lack of any irrigation or anything that the landscape has been used to for years, when you turn that off, it adds dead fuel loading. So that can be very problematic for us. That area that used to be green and lush, that if I had a fire burning towards that, hey, I'm probably going to catch it there. That's not there now.
How do we balance kind of environmental impacts when we make these water balancing decisions? The question is, would there have been water there to begin with? And if you look at some of these streams and systems, I think a lot of times there's maybe misdirected focus on the decisions that the board has made. A lot of the curtailments we make on systems where there's already no water to begin with. There's just no water there. When we issued the curtailments in 21 and 22, we acted on a suspension of the California Environmental Quality Act. The board relies on the suspension of CEQA because otherwise, if it wasn't suspended, it would be impossible to issue curtailments. So it's kind of either we issue curtailments or we do not. But if we're going to issue curtailments, we need essentially an emergency drought proclamation and suspension of CEQA.
This is an environment that was created, and we're spending millions of dollars to create this environment in other places that we already had, that's now gone. So I don't quite understand why people don't get this. This is the largest environmental impact of any discretionary decision in the state of California. Period. Nothing has been done to make that 18% go past Crown Motors. So next year, if Reclamation comes to you and says you get 18%, you're going to go, we have to sell the water again because we can't get past Crown Motors. There's $10 million in the bank. There's no good in the bank. Taking the twigs out of the ditch, whatever you're doing at mile 20, makes no difference. It's great, but if you can't get water to mile 3, it doesn't matter what you do at mile 20.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Next is James Rickert.
The meeting was, it was interesting. I got up in public comment to talk, and the first thing I talked about was infrastructure.
There's $12 million currently sitting in the bank accounts, according to this month's board packet. We deserve a plan, and we deserve a strategy.
It's been 5 months, and so I got up and said, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing something? We are suffering. Next year's irrigation season is coming quickly. Let's get going.
Some of you know this, others may not, but before last meeting, I was offered a job as a consultant, so I wouldn't run for the board. This didn't sit well with me. I don't want part of backdoor deals. There was money for this, but there was no money to allocate towards infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Rickert. Your time is up.
Thank you. Next, we have Steve Reyes.
We will be going into closed session, so thank you all for being here. We appreciate your attendance. And
Yes? This is open session, item 6.
And then got a message from James basically disclosing that he had been offered a job in exchange for deciding not to run. This is a very significant accusation to make, the promise of some kind of a benefit in exchange for not running for office. So after one of the board meetings, I just approached Ray Alianti directly after the board meeting and just said this was the information that I had been told, and was it true?
Consulting position to James Rickert, who's also running for the board.
It wasn't a job. It was
Okay.
non-paid.
Okay, a consulting position, or?
Yes, and his statement was
He was angry about the suggestion. So he confirmed the things James had told me, confirmed the messages. And I did have my voice memo running at the time and told him that I was running it when he said, if you get this wrong, I'll sue you. And so that was important to me too, that I tell a story that in a way that was fair to Ray, but also told the truth about what actually happened.
But I've been on long board, and this is the most ineffective board I have ever seen. I think the board just has to step up and say, our top priority is getting water into that system, whatever it takes. The fact that a couple of board members are quitting because things got tough, tells me they weren't in it for the long haul. When your board starts having problems, if you're really dedicated to that board, you'll figure out how to fix it. Every other board I've been on, we get money in, we go, hey, look, we have some money. Okay, let's decide what to do with it. Yep. And I'm used to boards where we're there to serve the public. So when the public shows up, we're like thrilled. Oh, wow, the public's here. We're going to hear what they have to say.
I think it's pretty unanimous that we don't get anywhere here.
Exactly.
Right.
So how do we fix that? And that's the frustrating part.
Well, we start speaking out of line. I think.
$84,649.55 to add in another pumping station. And it's budgeted. It's in their capital improvement plan for this year. They budgeted for this, but they're not moving ahead with it. Yeah, so we could potentially have. Yeah, sure.
Can I ask you a question? As you know, I'm with Shasta Scout. You were talking during your public comment about basically asking. Well, certainly one of the first things that we were told, and that everyone in the district was told, was that the local ACID region had no control over the decision to reduce the amount of water that came in. That was one of the first claims by public officials within ACID that I wanted to really find out if it was true. The idea that there would be no power whatsoever given to local officials seemed odd to us, and that was one of the things that we disproved. We have gotten some pushback on the idea of whether or not that was a voluntary agreement. Was it voluntary on the part of ACID to reduce their water that much? I would say it was. Legally it was. It was required to be under court rulings. However, they had few options, and that was an important part of the story too, to say it wasn't as if they just went up to the table and said, we'd love to give our water away.
Well, it's great to have a strategic plan, but it takes a while to build a strategic plan. We have about, 6-7 months before the next irrigation.
Yep, exactly.
So we have to go into emergency mode. Yep. I can't really say what's in the mind of the board, but it appears that they weren't really willing to fight that hard for the water. And I don't know if it's just, they saw there's $7 million. We could take that $7 million. Don't know what we're going to do with it, but we'll have $7 million.
Do you think there's financial corruption on the board?
I hope it's just incompetence, but the board president works for Doug Lamalfa, who is a big rice grower in another district. But if this board had really had the wool pulled over their eyes and felt they had to sell the water for money, at least they would have had the money and said, okay, we're not going to let this happen to us next year. We're going to fix these issues. Well, the board's not doing that. So that's starting to tell me that they just didn't have the wool pulled over their eyes. There's sort of a plan.
Fascinatingly, some of those early interviews we did indicated on the record openly, even though we actually haven't reported all this out yet, that there was some real significant issues with finances within the district, including like a lack of ongoing financial stability with the accounting systems, which led the board to kind of misplace $1 million, at least temporarily. That idea that you could have either $1 million too much or too little, but not be sure which, definitely flagged for me some concerns. And one of the things we're looking at is whose money should that be really? Who does it belong to? Does it belong to the people in the district? Because those are the people who have been affected. You know, it doesn't look like from the minutes that the board has made any plans for how to spend the money. Do you all have any options as far as how to kind of activate the board to make a plan for the district's money? I mean, that's users' money.
Well, I mean, the option would be to replace the board if they're not doing it.
Yes, that's it.
That's why we need this guy up there.
Yeah, well, they got you off in a hurry.
Yeah. 2 minutes, not a second more. They didn't want to. I have more to say, but I'll respect the rules. I like it.
Oh, yeah, that's from God.
One of the questions that we got a lot early on was this water sale to benefit Doug LaMalfa's rice farms? Because Brenda Haynes has worked with Mr. LaMalfa for a long time, and he's very well known as a rice farmer, and rice takes a lot of water. We found no evidence of that. It's really a different water system. It's a different watershed that benefits Mr. LaMalfa's land, as far as we know. But I have not done enough research to ever find evidence of that. I did find it interesting during my interview with Brenda that she did end up selling all of her cattle just shortly before this loss of water. And of course I thought, well, that's interesting. How recently, you know, and I did ask her some hard questions on the record about whether or not that decision was made as a result of knowing there wouldn't be water. She said no. She said that the decision was made essentially because I think of a change of life circumstance, something to do with family illness and age and retirement. I would love to hope and believe that it wouldn't change her interest in protecting everyone around her, but it certainly changed her own personal loss from the water sale.
When the Shasta Scout article came out, it honestly, I read it and it just put a pit in my stomach. Like, man, that's me that I'm reading about, and it just, it's tough. You know, I love being behind the scenes. I feel like it needed to be done. I feel like you just have to rip that Band-Aid off and just say, no, this is what happened. This is what I'm doing. So ultimately, I went with my heart and I didn't go with my wallet. I'm gonna run for this board and I'm gonna serve this community.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right on.
Yes, that's me. So I'm Shay.
Shay, I'm Brandon.
Brandon, it's very much a pleasure. So I'm the owner and executive chef of that spot.
I love what y'all doing over there.
I'm hunting down for purveyors because it's hard to find local product.
I was just there.
I really liked the idea of opening a farm-to-table restaurant here. I can get high-quality pork, chicken, beef, all of my produce. Everything is farmed and sustainable here local. And so I have a lot of local vendors and producers that are in this area. And a lot of the stuff that we get is either food out of people's backyards because they don't want it to go to waste and they have more than they need, or locals, farmers and ranchers who make their living by selling people like me their food. And as I have done that over the past 16 years, other restaurants have too. And that's created the ability for farmers to sell more often. If you shop local, if you keep your vision within 100 miles, if you buy from the people in your immediate community, they will grow. You will nourish them. On the broader sense, there is a massive human population and it needs to be fed, right? So the idea that we need farmers with large farms who can produce large amounts of apples or large amounts of lettuce, this is true. This is absolutely true. At the same time, we want to make sure that small individual communities can grow their own food so they are less reliant on large industrial farms.
If low allocations continue like we saw, that farming is going to change here in the Sacramento Valley. It's going to be a lot harder to plant crops, deliver the food, and keep a lot of these small communities alive, right? You've got communities up and down the valley here that are small disadvantaged communities that rely on agriculture as their number one source of income for wages, right? Those are going to slowly get lost over time. People are not going to be able to stay where you don't have a job.
I think there's somewhere around 350,000 acres of land that was fallowed this year in the state of California. Farmers are being pushed out. They're being forced out of business, forced to sell their land, repurpose their land. It's good. The next generation's going to be their turn to fight before too long.
I have less people that I can purchase from. There's less local food available. Prices are going up, and the ground is running fallow. This is not ground that didn't used to have water. This is ground that used to get nourished from the Sacramento River when it was flooding every year, but it doesn't. It doesn't flood anymore because it's dammed. And so now without the ACID canal, it doesn't get nourishment of any kind. Over the next 2 years, if that ACID, if it stays closed, there's going to be a huge washout. There's no way people are going to be able to survive that.
Through UC Davis, we've done some studies and looked at it. They're estimating about $1.3 billion worth of lost economic value produced here. And a lot of that is for these small communities that just won't be there.
All of our produce is going to be affected. What I can buy, what I can sell, what we as a community have available is going to be huge.
The only ones that are going to be able to make it are going to be big farms. And we all idolize, the small farmer, and we're actually pushing them out of business as we go down this path.
I have never seen a community come together so much than over this issue. It's been incredible. Ed and Elaine Roberts. Ed is going out. He's got a water tank in the back of his truck, driving out, helping people. What do you need? And someone goes on the Facebook page, hey, I've got a dry well and I've got 2 small kids. Probably within an hour, Ed's there with a full tank of water going, where do you want it? What can I do?
Now the hope is that next year will bring a different story. But the locals, they're not buying that narrative. And they're understandably very livid.
People are mad because they have lost their livelihoods. They've lost investments that they've got generations involved in. A lot of people that farm in this area, we're not a big commercial grower, but we have a lot of small farms. And a lot of people just want to support themselves, their families, and they want to pass that on to their posterity, their kids, their grandchildren.
I've known Ed since I was 16, and we kind of parted ways after I was married and he married, and we went our separate ways, and we touched base again in about 12 years ago and started a relationship.
After both of us were divorced?
Yes, after a divorce.
Well, I didn't grow up as a farmer, but I grew up with goats and chickens and cows and whatnot, and we've got 6 grandchildren, and we had chickens and goats, and they loved messing with the animals, so we decided, you know what, we got all this grass, we might as well get some cattle too.
We decided to buy the property that we live on because of the grandkids. We wanted them to experience running back in the fields and not being in the house all the time.
Yeah, without that water, the value's at least cut in half.
Well, here comes Eddie Roberts, save the day, so I can at least water my garden.
I thought, you know what, I kind of had a sense of duty that I needed to help. I've never charged anyone. I've had them give me $10, $20 for gas money, and that's okay. I just didn't set out to make a profit off of it.
They're God sent. They came knocking at our door. We didn't know what they were doing. They've been a blessing to not just us, but to so many people. We've been out of water. Started the first part of July, we started getting out of water. Really could see a pressure difference. And on July the 10th, we didn't have a drop. I woke up to nothing.
This neighborhood had water hoses strung from each house to each house, helping each other, which I thought was amazing.
This is where we shower. Right now it's empty. We fill it up, hoist it up, and I use bottled water that we buy for this. We're thankful that the swimsuits are fashionable or not.
When we didn't get water this year, we thought, should we sell the cows? I think of our grandkids and how much fun they have, and what do we tell them? We didn't try, we didn't succeed. I thought all night long about it. I couldn't sleep. And I said, I'm going to check to see if there's even an ACID group page. And there wasn't. So I had created it and just called it acid at first. And I thought, let me just throw it out there, see what happens.
People got to talk about what's going on, what impacts are you seeing, sharing pictures of turtles that are trying to cross Balls Ferry Road because all the ponds that they've lived in for years are now dry. When, just telling everyone what the impacts are, what's going on in their neighborhood.
A good friend of ours, Woody, he said, let's have a community meeting. What, 6 people came?
Yeah,
to that
I think
meeting?
the first one we had 6 people and 3 of them weren't even irrigators.
Yeah, and then we decided to have another one, and the room was full.
We had to even move it to a different location.
As a community, we made $24,340.37 from the fundraiser. I think that's outstanding. Thank you. And I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm a part of the Anderson-Cottonwood community.
This is one of the parts of the story that I really loved, getting to see the way the community came together and how much mutual support there was. What I loved about watching this community come together was seeing people who are parts of these fairly unusual and not understood parts of American society really behave in ways that we would want all of our neighbors to behave. Helping to move water, helping to document whose wells are going dry, protecting each other's reputation, standing up for each other at the board meeting.
I can't find any place in case law that the Bureau of Reclamation has any jurisdiction over our senior water line.
You have to remember that people who are part of groups that we don't understand are often really, really good neighbors, really good community members who have some fundamentally different ideologies that have sent them into groups that we don't understand.
It's as a group that we've done this. If we get water again, it will be because they stood up.
I'm just proud to be part of this community. I would love to represent them. I would love to help them any way I can. That's why I want to run, is because of people like that. They're not being served, they're not being heard, and they need to be.
We need to run. We need to make a change here.
I'm looking forward to a change. I'm trying to put together a letter.
I'll just do whatever I can to be a voice for the community. I mean, I would love to put some with you guys too.
Oh no.
First time.
We've been doing raw milk and cookies for the last 9 years, since about 2013, and we've watched it grow each year, to our surprise.
I think the first couple of years it was, 250 people showing up, and see the farm, have a good time, be together. It's become what some people say a community event. The milk was the vehicle for people to come here and get back in touch with their farmer, and the farmer get in touch with the community again.
A lot of people bring their kids out. That's their way for their children to have that exposure to a farm to see the cows, to see a pig and smell the smells of a farm is super fulfilling. Watching kids just go, watching them just be free and to have fun.
I was 4 years old when I realized this is what I wanted to do in my life. My parents were both from Holland. The big families, farm families back there, 10 kids or more. You know, you grow up coming through the Depression and then you're occupied World War II, 4 years, so you have to come through that. And then my dad, he came out here in 1952. So he came out 5 years before he married my mom. So they adopted me at 4 months old. I appreciate that generation for what they did, you know, and the hard work they did. You know, that generation built this country.
James and I met 2018. He really shaped into becoming a mentor for me, and you know, he's more like my big brother now. When we found out that we weren't getting water, we went down to the ACID meeting together and sat through it and listened, and we both walked out of there, and I looked at him and he looked at me and I went, you know, you're the guy, right? And he was like, I don't know, man, I've never done this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but you're the guy to fix this. Watching other producers sell all their animals, they're not just selling 40 animals, they're selling 30 years of genetics. They're selling 30 years of time, effort, investments into these animals, into this production system, and then it's gone. We've relied on Anderson Cottonwood Irrigation District for the entirety of our time here, and this year is our first year without water. Right now, we're at 6 times the cost for 35% less production. And it's sinking us.
It's emotional. You know, what about our families that are getting milk, you know? And so we are trying to sell this place as an operation and hopefully see it continue on with somebody else. The idea of stepping out of this and going somewhere else, yeah, it kind of, I'll be honest with you, it scares me a little bit. I guess one of those times in your life, you know, where change happens, you know, and you I guess you find out what you're made of.
Do I think my 3 kids are gonna have that same opportunity on this farm? No, I don't think so. It doesn't give me hope for them to have the dairy that I would want them to have.
One of the things that we were worried about as we continue to investigate is, are people going to lose their homes? Are they going to lose their livelihoods, their futures? We started to realize these folks, if they don't get money or water consistently in the next 6 to 8 months, they're likely going to lose their homes. We're still watching that. We're still concerned about that.
Yeah, it's the first rain we've seen of the season, really. We did have one little shot in October, but this has been the first good storm here in November. Us irrigators, we're watching the rain. We're watching the forecast. We're seeing how much water is coming down. We're looking at outflows out of Shasta Dam. Are we releasing the water that we're getting? Are we saving it for next year? We're really monitoring that because that's our lifeblood for next year. I've always told my wife I'd never get into politics, and I'm getting a lot of I told you so's right now. I really wanted to have a debate with the incumbent. She was not interested in having a debate with me, which is unfortunate because I truly feel that voters need to hear both sides. I could have fundraised. I could have really went big. I did have people offering to finance, you know, give me some money, but this community suffered enough. I just can't in good faith take money from people for my campaign.
I just don't feel right doing it, so I didn't.
Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing today?
Good. My election going.
I am ready for November 8th to be here, Nadine. This is this is not what I wanted. This is not what I signed up for. I'm over it.
It's the longest week in the world.
It is. Every minute is every minute is an hour right now. This is it's insane. I can't wait for it to be over.
Well, but I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing lots of support, so I think you're going to be fine.
I hope so. I don't know. I honestly don't know which way it's going to go. No matter what happens, the whole community realized that there was a huge problem with ACID, and this board knows that they're under a microscope. The incumbent knows her every step's going to be watched, and she needs to be making the right decisions for the community. So at the very minimum, we accomplished that.
Good morning. Poke the Hornet's Nest. I'm Nick Gardner. I'm your host, along with co-host Doug Jenke. Good morning, Doug. How are you?
Good morning, Nick. How the heck are you? Today, we have a gentleman who is running for a board position, and good morning, Mr. James Rickert.
Good morning, Doug. Thanks for having me today.
No problem, sir. So, as a realtor...
I did appreciate that he was very upfront with me as soon as he had made that decision to run, sharing that he was going to, and I think assuming that that would impact the way that I was able to view him as a source, and it did obviously impact that, making sure that I wasn't in any way showing favoritism or building a relationship that wouldn't be fair to his opponent, Brenda Haynes.
That water was sold with the intent to improve our infrastructure, but to our knowledge, nothing has been done. The resolution was passed on April 14th, 2022. That wasn't yesterday.
No.
That wasn't 2 weeks ago. My place is to look forward and find strategies for solutions. You know, where do we go from here?
Good question. I mean, we've got about 10 minutes left with you, sir. What would you do? Someone listening goes...
One of the core ethics of journalism is this fairness issue. It doesn't matter if I like one person more than the other, if I have more of a relationship with them, or we've built more trust. It's always my job to protect both sides of that political race, to protect Brenda's interest and to protect James's interest with my reporting, and at the same time, mostly to protect the public's interest.
How many board members are there?
There's 5 total.
Why did you decide to pick on Brenda?
I'm not picking on Brenda at all. You know, I'm 42 years old. I'm a multi-generation ranching family here in Shasta County, and I want to help my community. I want to go for some solutions here. I don't want to focus on problems. We all waste our time on problems, but I want to focus on solutions.
James, I'm happy to meet you.
Likewise, Nick. Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
We're not taking any phone calls. Welcome, Brenda Haynes.
Well, thank you for having me.
Brenda, I've got a couple of questions I'd like to jump into. You know, we got 18% water, and obviously it wouldn't reach your first customer, so you sold that water. It looks to me like you made lemonade out of lemons.
Well, thank you. I think so, too. This was not a hard decision to make at all, and I think anybody on the planet would have made that same decision. What I've learned is California water is a very complicated situation, and I'm encouraging people to vote for Brenda Haynes. I think this is a time where my experience on the board is what we need to take us into the next year.
Well, folks, we are at the end of the show. We've heard from...
Good morning, Shasta County. Today is November 8th, and it's Election Day. It's a big year this year with many seats up for election, so remember to get out and vote.
I mean, if I get marbles and eat like snakes and
I feel bad about, but also, you know, yourself worry more if the time December comes on. It's a
Mama's on the phone, sweetie.
Oh gosh, the election day, it's a bit of a blur, to be honest to you. Just a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, and just a lot of anticipation.
Okay, real quick, everyone, I'll do some really quick introductions, and we'll start with this guy, and I want you to introduce yourself, and I want you to say how you know me.
Whoa, okay. I'm Seth. Human Gordon. I know James.
I invited a lot of people that have just been part of the story, part of my journey, essentially, to the election results.
My name's Ben, I'm an alcoholic. Good morning.
Going to these ACID meetings, I made a lot of friends. There were a lot of people that I hadn't met before, or I knew of them and our paths had crossed maybe once or twice, but really got to know them through this process. I was nervous. I had no idea which way it was going to go. I mean, you enter this with a blindfold on. You give it your best shot, and this is the first time I've ever run for anything in my life. Didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't have as many signs as the incumbent did. I didn't do robocalls. I didn't do mailers. I didn't do a lot of the other things. So I thought it was going to be a tight race.
Are you ready? I will. Out of 576 votes total, James the man's got 380.
To 196.
It was emotional, to be honest. It was cool. The initial results, when I first looked at it, it was like 2-1, me in the lead, which completely shocked me.
I think I got it. Now the real work begins. Game on.
The lucky Chevys, man, I told you. The lucky Chevys.
I know.
It's been heartening to watch the new board. Essentially, very little has changed in people's circumstances, but the feeling that they're being listened to and that the board is their ally has completely shifted.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to start by introducing some new folks on the board up here.
This isn't a matter of, we got rid of a bad board and now we have a good board. We have a different board, and where we have yet to see in what ways they're able to manage the district differently and to what extent that shows that it was mismanaged before.
With 4 out of 5 new board members, it's a new dynamic, and we're there to listen to the public and make the best decision we can representing the irrigators. I've had a lot of people reach out and just say, this is night and day different of what it used to be to what it is today.
We're all in this together, moving together, understanding together. Your ideas are valuable to us.
It's one of the things that we're looking for as journalists. We're looking to drive accountability into those public officials to say, like it or not, you are accountable to your people, and we will insist that you be accountable to them. There was a really interesting moment when I walked into that same boardroom that I had walked into 7 months before and had been chock full of people who were just angry as hell. And I just really had this moment when everyone in the room reacted to me, from the board members waving and nodding to the CFO, all these community members. So people from really different perspectives who had told me all kinds of different things about the other players in the room. I knew all these backstories, and I felt like I had a place in that room. People viewed me as part of the story too. Kind of like the eagle-eyed journalist who's nobody's friend but everyone's at the same time. It was a very full circle moment for me. I just felt like 7 months in, I'm part of this community too. This was something I didn't even know what ACID was. That was a really great feeling to feel like the community had felt supported by my work. All kinds of people in the community, not just one side or the other. I think at some level, I wonder if the story will ever be over for me with ACID, because I think I care too much now about this district, and it's taught me too many lessons about the importance of watching officials and listening to the public. The undercurrent that I'm watching is, what's the long-term fallout? I want to know how many people will never have a functional well again, or how many people will lose their property as a result of what happened last year, even if we get water next year. And that is the story that I think the state and the feds really need to hear. They need to hear the stories of retirees who lose their future. I hope we don't have those stories to tell, but I'm afraid that we will. It's really impacted me pretty deeply on a personal level too, the importance of public officials really holding that responsibility, and journalists too, remembering that everyone we cover is a real human with a real story and minimizing harm wherever we can.
First of all, thank you everybody for showing up today. We're kicking off our irrigation season. We'll open the gates and we'll get these ditches charged and start irrigating next week, and have a great irrigation season. Thank you.
Until you have a big issue like having no water for a year, that was something that hit home, and it literally hit home on our little farm.
Pretend you know each other.
Yeah.
We're good, water.
Water's so important. It's so integral to our society. I want everyone to really take a good hard look at, when they put food on the table tonight, where does that food come from? And is that where you want your food to come from?
So Lord, we do thank you for this day, this time, this event. Thank you for the miracle of this past winter and all this water, Lord. We just thank you that we can open these gates and look forward to a good irrigation season.
Would I go back and change anything that I did? I don't think so. Maybe I wouldn't have been as vocal about the job offer and the board members trying to get me to not run. Maybe in hindsight, I don't want to be that guy. I just wanted the public to know this is what's going on. And if it happened to me, what else has happened? This community opened their eyes in 2022. It's brought neighbors together. It's brought a community together. And I think that really helped shape the future of this district. We're just a podunk Cottonwood, teeny tiny little Anderson. We're small communities, but we got a big heart. I think if you were to fast forward in 10 years from now, I think we'll all look back at 2022 as the year that ACID woke up. We realized the true cost of water.
Tonight, there are few corners of the massive state of California not feeling the impact of the relentless line of storms that have been hammering the state for days. At least 17 people have died.
Diamond Street Canal has breached.
The ACID canal has leaked so much over the past few weeks that it's created this small pond that neighbors say has never been here before. ACID board member James Rickert says he's working with the county to get help from the state as soon as possible.
I didn't know
how bad it was until I really started to look at the infrastructure. We've got a lot of work to do in this canal. This is going to take a lot of cleanup. It's going to take a lot of partners. You know, we need help.